Welcome back to RC Dirt Oval, the podcast. I'm your host, Andy Zeller, and thank you so much for joining me for today's episode. Hint, it's just going to be me for this episode. You may notice from the title that it's supposed to be intriguing. I'll say that. I felt like with this platform, I needed to put an episode together just to kind of voice my opinion. I'll do a quick review of this past weekend, and then we'll dive right into it. This past weekend, basically just wrapping up the outdoor season. Ultimate RC ran on Sunday, as well as Deer Run. Factory had their open house and seminar on Saturday. And everybody's pretty much just preparing for the indoor season at this point. We have one race left at Deer Run that we're going to try and get in Sunday if the weather holds out. Otherwise, everybody's kind of buckling up and moving inside. 997's up and running. Factory opener is this Saturday. And then Pheasantland seems to be on the tail end of their construction. The facility looks great. Hats off to everybody that's helped out over there and got that underway and really got so far in a short amount of time. So look for them to, I'm sure put out a schedule here in the near future. I don't believe they're racing this weekend, but keep an eye on their Facebook page for any sort of schedule. Without, I guess, going into, I don't think there's anything else to go into for the weekend. So without further ado, we'll get into this episode. I want to say first that I'm just one person. This is my opinion. I do not claim to be right. I do not think that other people are wrong. I don't think any of that. This isn't meant to be divisive, but rather this episode I'm hoping that maybe by just putting some of this stuff out in the open can maybe change a couple minds out there or get people at least talking and trying to figure out ways to make this hobby and sport better for everybody. In the first episode, I kind of went over like a brief overview of who I am. And there were a couple examples I wanted to bring up more specifically for this episode that I think help explain my perspective a little better too. Obviously, I own a track. I am a fairly new track owner. I opened up First Capital RC Raceway 2 years ago. We ran 2 full complete seasons at one location. Moved over to Deer Run now, where we're going to run at least 3 years. That's what our lease is currently set up for. Obviously, anything can change, but I can only hope that we'll be there for 3 years, at least. And that is the extent of my track owning career so far, if you'll call it that. I don't know. I am also a driver. I have driven now for about 3.5 years. And I get that that's still fairly new to the hobby, and there are plenty of people out there that have raced way longer and way more than I have. But aside from my racing or hobby background, I ran a flag football league a few years back. I'll dive a little more into that, but I also started a stock 600 series. I didn't actually start it. I just helped run it for the first. I think I helped run it for 3 seasons. The first season was like minimal. We did barely anything, but I helped coordinate and market and start that series with another gentleman. So I have a background in creating things or managing things within hobbies. With the Flag Football League, the reason that league started was I say we, like myself and my team and other teams participated in basically the main league for our area. And in that league, we had a division and a B division. The B division was the less experienced people, and the A division was the more experienced people, the people that really took it serious and thought that the NFL was going to scout them from flag football. we played in that league for a couple years, and somehow I ended up being responsible for this. I don't even know if you probably call it like a mutiny league that we started, where basically that well, it's still in operation, but the previous league we were in, the B division was basically the driving force of that league. There were only a handful of A teams, and primarily every team the majority was the B division. So a bunch of us players, coaches were talking, and we were very frustrated because the league was designed to really cater to the A division, and it didn't care about the B division at all. Like, example, they wouldn't give trophies for the B division, but they would give trophies to every team that made playoffs or whatever in the A division. Plus, every team in the A division would make the playoffs, but only a handful would make it from B. And there was all these little things that, as a player and as a coach, and investing time into putting your team together and coordinating with your team, and then going and playing in this league year after year, season after season, we weren't receiving what we needed to receive out of that league. So a bunch of us, and somehow I ended up like taking the reins with it. We basically created a league that was ran by the coaches and ran kind of more like a union or like a board, where each team, a coach, had a vote in everything that we did, and that was awesome. And it was also a nightmare, like in both senses. Two things can be true at once, and we had a blast. The league was super successful. The first year it was awesome. I gave up on it after year 2 because it was not something I was interested in continuing to pursue. There are so many reasons behind that, but really it was just something that I didn't want to be a part of anymore. Honestly, it killed my love for flag football, and I wish it didn't, but it just didn't work out. So I'm sure some of you are hearing that and probably putting together pieces of how that can relate to the RC hobby. But that's not why I say that. I say that because I think that doing these things previously help with my perspective on the community as a whole. And I think that maybe even I think about that a little more than some others might, because of my background and coming from that. Like, that experience to me drives me to want to fix problems that I see so that it doesn't end up like that league did. Everybody ended up, once I closed that league down, everybody went back to the old league, and it's like, that's all great and fun and fine. But, then you just swallow everything and you kind of go back to the same old, same old. And I know for a lot of people that ended when our league ended, that ended their love for flag football just like me, and it kills the hobby. So again, I'm not saying that as to be a direct correlation, but more so that it's trying to give you an idea of how my brain works and how I kind of look at things. So what I've noticed is that there are a handful of, I don't want to necessarily call them problems, but argumentative points or we'll call them like triggers for this hobby and this sport that I feel like so many times, especially with Facebook, you see these giant arguments evolve from the same couple things. The first thing I notice is the problem with classes. That stems from a bunch of different things, I think. There's too many times that you see, and I saw it this week even, and I'm sure plenty of you out there have, a class is suggested or ran, or somebody has an idea for something and they get ostracized and destroyed for suggesting anything. I had Jeff Palmer on this podcast and we explained how he, got ostracized and just beat down online and basically canceled his series because of it, because he put out an idea that he and personally I believe is a good move for the hobby, and he got freaking ridiculed for it for no reason other than everybody has an opinion and everybody is so passionate about their opinion. And I think at times, unfortunately, people are not empathetic or willing to think that opposite of their opinion could exist, or that maybe they are not willing to bend at all. And you see that with this class argument all the time. We have so many different Traxxas cars, and the Traxxas Modified comes out, and it's this big, it turned into such a huge argument, like nationwide, because the name, they called it a Mudboss. That was like huge no-no. And that I understand. I think Traxxas messed up, and I think they made it right by changing the name to the Traxxas Modified. That's definitely a good move on their end for business sake. And, that backlash was certainly deserved. But now you're seeing the same ridicule about that car in general, branching to even beyond that. It goes into the community. If somebody suggests to run a car somewhere, they get ridiculed and they get beat down for it. Like, that's the last thing we need is another class. Like, really, what does that ultimately matter? I understand this argument from both sides. I honestly do. I see it from a track owner perspective, that a track owner doesn't want to make anybody unhappy. A job with any business is to provide your customer with a good experience and a good product. For a track owner, that's giving you a good driving surface to race on. It's giving you a good facility with the things that you need, as much as they're able to give you, whether it's power, bathrooms, parking, all of these different things. And then it comes down to giving you a good experience. That means there's things like running the show smooth and as efficiently as possible. It means not trying to turn away people. And, I've seen it, and I've seen some people that comment that side of the argument in these, these arguments that come up. And that's really what it comes down to. If a track is struggling financially, and I will come out here on this podcast and I will say this past season at First Capital was tough. Financially, it was tough. With that location, anybody that's been there, it was in the middle of the woods, and we busted our butts to try and make that better than we had it the previous year. And I would argue that we certainly did that. For year number 2, it was significantly nicer, and that's hats off to Joe Schrader, to Tim Beyer, to the Souders, all the people that helped out to come and give their time to help. I'm going to say right away, Jeff Foster and Roy DeNike too. They built last year. I wasn't even in town. I was out of town, and Roy FaceTimed me and was like, "Hey, we built this banner stand basically like attached to Jeff's table." And it was this wooden frame that was just, scrap plywood, or not plywood, 2x4s. And they made it look great. It looked awesome. It lasted all year. That thing is still up there and still rock solid. There's so many people that help to make that place better. But ultimately, it came down to our numbers every single race. And I remember this season, I forget if it was, I think the beginning of October maybe, or September. I think it was October, where it rained it was the hurricane stuff that came through. And, we missed, I want to say like 4 races because of rain. And that was 2 whole weeks where we had no income, and it was right at the beginning of the month where, rent was due and all of these other things, and we're just scraping by. Um, there's people out there like Jim McKeon, like Nick DeAngelis, like other people that do promotional or uh, help with races that get next to nothing for doing it. These people and track owners are doing this because they love the hobby. They're doing it to provide you with a good service, and they're doing everything they can think of to do that. So, as much as I'm a track owner, I'm also a driver, and I know that I appreciate the things that track owners and other people are doing out there. I see the work that Garrett puts in at the factory, that Mike has put in at Pheasantland, that Howard puts in at Ultimate. All of these tracks, Jeff Palmer with Loco Joe's, these guys are giving everything that they can to give you a good experience. So when we make the class argument, it shouldn't be about whether or not you think that car is worth racing or not. And I get, like, you can't let every single thing come to the track either. But if there's a car that is semi-popular and there's a group of people that have it and they want to bring that to a track and race it, I don't see the harm other than, it's going to extend the program. Yeah, there's going to be maybe only a couple people in that class, but if we work and we promote and we allow that person that has that particular car might go and move into another car then at another point. They might bring more people out that they talk into buying that car, and then they race that car, and it's somebody that wasn't in the hobby before. There's so many things that and points that go into that specific example, that there's more ways that can help than it can hurt. And I think that that's part of the main problem that we'll get to at the end of this. Obviously, there's the classes. There's the rules is also a big problem, I think. I'm just going to call these things problems. I don't necessarily think they're problems, but I don't want to overthink it. It's late. Whatever. Rules. A track puts out a rule package for something, and then another track can put out a completely different rules package for the same car. And then another track can have a completely different rules package for the same car. And then this Motorama might have completely different rules for 360, which they do. This is my first year racing Motorama, and I've been there plenty of times to watch it, but I don't know. I never paid enough attention because I've never participated, that I didn't know all the rules for every class. I knew most of them, but not every class. And I didn't know that 360 was ran with mod rules, basically. So it's like, as a track owner, then that gets me thinking, like, well, if that's what Motorama's doing, I'm like super unprepared because I raced all summer now in 360 and last winter. And now I have to completely, or not the end of the winter, whatever. Now looking ahead for next year as a track owner, now I'm thinking in my head that I need to prepare people as best I can for Motorama, because that's the biggest race in our area, right? Like, that's a huge deal. And it's kind of like the Super Bowl of our area for RC racing. So I feel an obligation to try and prepare people for that, but also to, again, be a good track owner and provide the things that are most common across the board. I think that's something, though, that, really is a problem with our area, because you could go to every track in the area and have a different set of rules for the same exact car, and that is such a pain as a driver. So in the future, maybe I have an idea to fix that. But um, moving into more of the track owner perspective, another big problem that I see is that track owners are kind of like, I don't know how I want to describe this. They're really like kept on a short leash because of our area. Geographically, with all of the tracks in our area, if a track owner tries to do something out of the ordinary, or they try to really just exist and they make any sort of mistake, it's that simple for somebody to pick up and say, I'm going to go run at this place instead. And that isn't necessarily a problem. It's certainly a freedom as a driver in the area, is that if you don't like one place, there's somewhere else you can totally race, and it's probably not even going to be that much of a drive difference. But that really stinks to hold that on track owners, because you get stuff like Jeff Palmer putting out an idea or a concept and getting ostracized and destroyed over it online because he thinks, and personally, I believe it's better for that particular class. It makes more sense. I saw it last night with Mod Sprint and 13.5 cars in the same feature with half a second difference in lap times. And we're talking a 13.5 just stock system in a 360 versus like a 6-turn in a mod. And yeah, like the track conditions and everything like that go into that. It's not a, consistent, like this is the blueprint and this is how it is. But if they're that close, we're really only making it then about experience. And that's how Motorama's set up. Motorama's saying, here's a sprint car class, and here's the exact same sprint car class, but the only difference is you have to be less experienced for this. The problem that lies in that is that now you have a whole huge gray area. What makes this person qualified to race this class versus qualified to race this class? In any type of racing, if the New England Patriots are playing against a college, Division III team or whatever, like what is that going to look like? Like it's so tough, because I get how fragile everything can be. But I think the ultimate problem, what it all comes down to, is I think Pennsylvania, our area, has an attitude problem. I think that as a community, as racers, as track owners, I think that we have a bad attitude. My buddy Steve Souter went down to Alabama, and I followed along as best I could. I didn't get to watch the race, but he was texting me updates and told me that Emily won the novice race down there, and I was super proud and excited, and it was great news, and I was excited for that news. I felt crazy when he was telling me the whole story about his experience down there, and we kind of, through talking, both realized that, when he went to that track, they had a completely different environment down there. And I get that this hobby is racing. It's competitive. I get that it's expensive, and we have a lot invested in this, and that makes us more passionate about it as well. We all have that willing, or that need to win and to compete and succeed. That's one of the biggest payoffs for this hobby is getting your podium picture. I get it. I remember my first win. I remember when, I did good at the factory, like just making the main one week, I was stoked. And that can make you feel awesome. But I can also remember times where I'm on the driver's stand having an argument with somebody because I accidentally, if I could talk, accidentally bumped into him in turn one. And now, I'm being called names or being ridiculed for making a mistake. Like, sorry, switch my Zen up. There's an attitude problem. The problem is that down in Alabama, Steve talked about the track owner down there where they raced, and this was for the Papa Willie's Dirt Nationals. I know, I think his name's Scooter. I forget the track name. It's late, but he said that track owner, when they would race a race, if there was somebody that was struggling that looked like they were real loose or all over the place, they were tough, the track owner would say, "Hey, you who won the race, the winner, that person that was struggling out there, they look like they were having a tough time. Go swing by their table, help them out quick." And Steve told me that most of the time he didn't even have to say it. There were already people going over to them. And first things first, I have seen that in our area. There are people that are wonderful and a wealth of knowledge that are willing to help out anybody that they can. And I'm not saying that doesn't exist. What I'm saying is that not enough of that exists. And on the opposite, I think there's too much of the opposite of that. I think that there are people that are so willing to yell at somebody because they messed up, and then that in turn messed you up, that you're quicker to do that than to turn around and go walk over to their table and say, "Hey man, I saw you looked really, really tight going in. It feels like you had to really slow up, and I think that's why I hit you the one time. Let's look at your car. What are your shocks, man?" And again, there are people that do this. I'm not saying there aren't. I'm saying that we need more of that. We need less of the "you're an idiot if you drive a Traxxas car," or "you're an idiot if you don't drive a purpose-built car," or "your head's in the clouds if you're driving a purpose-built car," whatever. We need less of that, and we need more of, what can I do? How can I help this person that's having a tough time? Because I can tell you from everything I've ever done, that ultra competitive, I'm better than you attitude is not worth anything. All you're going to do is ultimately piss people off. You're going to make a bad reputation for yourself. You're going to not be, considered a friend. Whereas, if we use this hobby to extend our friendships and find new people, I've found some of my closest friends through this hobby, and I'm extremely thankful for that. And I don't think that would happen if I went around thinking that I was this much better than everybody else. I think that track owners can be like that. I think that racers can be like that. I think that we just need to pump the brakes a little bit in Pennsylvania. And again, this is totally my opinion. A lot of people out there will, totally be, I'm open to criticism. I'm fine with it. I'm not saying I'm correct. I'm not saying that I've always able to be that person either. Yeah, you might trip up and get upset about something here and there. The difference is, go make it right. Make that person feel better about how you acted. And more importantly, take the extra step to try to help them get better. If we don't get better, the problem doesn't get fixed, and it gets worse because that person that was struggling gets fed up with it, sells all their stuff, and now we're one less person in the hobby. It kind of all tends to bleed together with the whole track owners and our area being so saturated that, if Garrett says something that I don't like or whatever, and I end up leaving that track, and then, I go to the next place, and then eventually that person, I go to Pheasant Land because we're indoor, whatever. I go to Pheasant Land, and Mike does something that I don't like, or he makes a rule that I don't agree with, and then I leave that track. Where do I go now? Like, do I go to 997 and then Sisney does the same thing? Then what? Like, the more we're all unable to bend and cooperate, the more that this is designed to just push us all out of the hobby. And I did this episode, and I wanted to do this episode because I care and because I want this hobby to succeed, and I don't want it to come to what I've seen happen with the flag football league that I created, the stock 600 class that I helped out with. You know, there's places for everything to fit in. People like the Traxxas cars because they're inexpensive. If you bust a bearing carrier on a Traxxas car, it's $3 to fix it, versus a Custom Works just for the plastic ones is $6. You know, and that's not a knock on Custom Works or GFRP or any of the purpose-built stuff. It's just more expensive. They're smaller companies. They're not Traxxas. They're not getting everything cranked out in the millions. You know, it's fine. But people need to understand that could be why this person is running a Traxxas car, or, you know, any of that. And one of the big things to kind of tie that in together, and maybe I'll have a better episode that really can dive into the Traxxas and purpose-built feud. But right now, we have a 360 class and we have a 410 mod class. If you look at it like Motorama, where throw out the motor difference, the tire rule, all that stuff, throw that out. And it's ultimately two classes that are based on experience. If we run experienced people that are capable of moving up, they need to understand that the less experienced people coming into sprint cars are going to come into that class. So you're going to have some slower people, or you're going to have some people that are struggling and learning, especially if those people are coming from like a Mudboss and they are comfortable in a Mudboss and now they want to move up to a sprint car. You know, the same people that will argue and say that the Traxxas cars are junk, that you learn bad habits, that whatever, that they're the worst and the purpose-built's the way to go. Two things can be simultaneously true. The purpose-built stuff, if you want people to get into that, then you need to understand that the 360 class or the beginner class in that is going to involve people that are struggling. And if you're just running 360 because you want to win, which is fine. Again, that's some people like that class because it's tied down and stuff. Totally get it. You just have to also simultaneously understand that there's going to be beginners that come into that. And you have to be willing to not only tolerate that, but you have to be willing to help too, or it's going to stay the same. You're going to wait 2 seasons for somebody to get better, because those are a whole different animal. And until you start driving something, where else are they supposed to jump into mod late model? Are they supposed to jump into what else is purpose built? Mod EDM? Like, that is what that class is for, in my opinion. And we need to take a different perspective with that class. And in the same sense, the same vein, those same people that would maybe argue for that might also argue like people can run 13.5 Mudboss and Mudboss, but really it should be almost the same. But luckily we have a novice class that most of the tracks run to give people the overall opportunity to come into the hobby and learn dirt oval on a Mudboss in a novice class. You know, that's probably the best, easiest place to start, least expensive, etc. So I know that I'm saying like some divisive things, and it might come across as like arrogance or I know everything. It is not that at all. I'm just saying my perspective on things that I see as a track owner, as a driver, and as somebody that has started a league and a hobby before, and I've seen it fail. And I don't like failing, and I don't want to be a part of anything, that's going to fail. So, um, again, take it for what it is. I hope that this can hopefully open up more dialogue between everybody, between track owners, between racers, promoters, all of it. I'd like to get more into some of this stuff at a later time, hopefully with a guest next time. But I wanted to air this stuff out, and hopefully it's something that can get the pot stirred enough to, start dialogues that aren't just people ripping people online. So with that, I'm going to run into the results. Very short, brief. Ultimate ran on Wednesday. 13.5 Mudboss. Tim Diebler was second. Matt Kirkpatrick got the win. 13.5 Sprint was Howard Young in third. John Bollock in second, and Kevin Kuzer got the win. 17.5 Sprint. John Pauly was third. Nick DeAngelis was second, and Phil Marabella got the win. Midget. James Henry was third. Brett Hollinger was second, and John Pauly got the win. Mudboss was Tim Diebler in third. Aaron Roshong and John Pauly got the win in that as well. Deer Run ran Wednesday night. 13.5 Mudboss. Colby Dillon was third. Jeff Foster second, and Owen Wise got the win. Mod Sprint was Steve Loy in third. Kyle Loy in second. Bryson Hartlob in first. Rally was Roy DeNike in third. Tyler DeNike second, and Jeff Foster in first. Bandit Late Model, Justin Mong was third. Andy Zeller was second, and that's me. And Shane Holtzapple was first. Midget Owen Wise was third. Jeff Foster was second. Anthony Pancos got the win. Mudboss was Colby Dillon in third. Michael Fay in second. Anthony Pancos in first. Novice was Archer Zeller in third. Cody Fiddler in second. Emily Souter in first. Rookie was Nicholas Ramirez in second. Avery Souter in first. And Traxxas Modified was Roy DeNike third. Tyler DeNike second. And Jeff Palmer got the win. Looking ahead for the weekend, factory opener on Saturday. They are practicing actually Friday night. So this evening, 4 to 8 p.m., practice will be open for the Dirt Oval. Saturday morning, doors will open at 8, and driver's meeting is at 8:30. 11 o'clock is when the start time that's when they'll start. They put out every year, they put out a parking map. So make sure you check out their the Factory RC Raceway Facebook page. Check for that map. It shows all the different places you can park. If it's a huge turnout, which I'm sure it probably will be, there will be limited parking in different spots. So you got to make sure you're parking in the right spot. Don't get anybody towed. Deer Run, we're going to try and run this Sunday if the weather holds out for us. Other than that, that'll be our final race of the outdoor season. I think we might be the last ones, so no more outdoor racing, and we're going to move into the indoor season formally. So everybody have a great week. Have a great weekend. Everybody that's going out to factory, good luck, and hope to see some of you on Sunday if we run. You can keep an eye on our Facebook page, and I'm sure I'll make that announcement once we know for sure what the weather is definitely going to do and go from there. But I appreciate everybody listening into this episode. I know it's just me and makes it a little boring, but I think that it's important, and I think that there's some things that we need to figure out and just maneuver and make this hobby even better. So with that, I will see you guys next time. Make sure to follow along, like, subscribe, follow our Facebook page, and until the next one, I'll see y'all later. Thank you.